Hello, welcome to another Learn Python tutorial. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how you can make a higher or lower card game. So here is my example. We've got the 7 of spades as my card, so I've got to choose higher or lower. I'm going to choose H for higher, and it is higher, so it's the Jack of spades. It says correct. This time I'm going to choose lower. That's 9 of hearts, excellent. And this time I'm going to choose higher. And it's not correct, so this time it says wrong, and it should say game over, and I got 2 correct answers. Okay, so there's the example. Let's just close that down for now, and let's get started. So you need to open up idle, and once you've opened up idle, you need to create yourself a new file. Good. So we're going to start our program. Now we're going to be using a couple of modules here. We're going to be needing to do some weights to give us some time weights. So we're going to need to do the time module. We're going to need to import the time module. We're going to do an os.system clear or CLS to clear the screen in between each time we pick a card. So we're going to need the OS module, and we're going to be picking random cards. So we're going to need the random module for this game. Excellent, there we go. Now, when you think about a pack of cards, there are 2 aspects to it. You've got the rank of each card. So let's start with those. And we're going to put those inside of a list. We always use a square bracket for the list, as you can see there. Each item, because we're going to be using strings, which are just for text characters, each item goes in speech marks and separated by a comma. So let's add all of these ranks of the cards. We've got an ace, and then a 2, and then a 3, all the way up to the end. There we go. Now be careful when you're doing this. Make sure that you wrap each item inside of speech marks to make it a string or a single inverted comma, whichever you want. I'm just using speech marks because it's easier for me. Oops, there we go. If you do get an error on this line, just check that each item is separated by a speech mark. Jack, Queen, and King. There you go, brilliant. So there's each of the ranks, the possible ranks that you could have in a pack of cards. The ace all the way up through to king, which is great. And obviously in a normal pack of cards you have 4 suits as well. So let's add those in as well. You can have clubs, hearts, diamonds, or spades. There we go. Brilliant. So we've got a list of those as well. So we've got our ranks and we've got our suits. Oh, let's just change that to suits. So we've got a list of ranks and a list of suits. But what we need to do is we need to combine those, the 13 of those and the 4 of those. We need to go through each of the combinations of those. So ace of clubs, ace of hearts, ace of diamonds, ace of spades. And then 2 of clubs, 2 of hearts, 2 of diamonds, 2 of spades. We need to go through those and combine them all into one big deck. So the way we do this is we create ourselves an empty deck, ready to put loads of cards in. And then what we need to do is we need to do a loop, because we're going to loop through each of these ranks and we're going to loop through each of the suits. But we're not going to loop through them one after another. We're not going to do all the ranks and then all the suits. We're going to do those, but then we're going to go inside of the loop and do a nested loop for those. So let's see how that looks. So what we do here is we say, okay, for rank in each of the ranks. There we go, for rank in ranks. And then we do the nested one for suit in suits. And then we do deck.append. Append means add to a list, so you're going to add an item to the list. And what we do here is rank plus of suit. There we go. So the idea being is that we go through each of these ranks. We pick the first rank, which is here, pick the first rank, and then we go here and we go through each of the suits for each of the rank, and then we add to the deck that item. So it'll go ace of clubs, and then ace of hearts, and then ace of diamonds, and then ace of spades, which is this inner loop here. And then when it gets to the end of this inner loop, so it's done all of these suits, it'll then drop out and go back and go to the next rank. So let's just try running that. So we'll go run module. Okay, it needs to be saved. And let's call this higher, lower card game. And we'll save that to the desktop. Save. There we go. So now if you run it, which is just on there, if we type in deck, it should display us the deck that's been added to. And there you go. So you can see it there, ace of clubs, ace of hearts, ace of diamonds. And instead of us having to manually create each of those items there, we have managed to do it so that it does it automatically. But there's a bit of a problem, or there's something missing. When we're comparing higher or lower of the cards, the computer doesn't know whether an ace of clubs or a 7 of spades is higher. We need to give it a way of knowing which one is going to be higher than the other. And the way we do that is we need to change this deck slightly. At the moment, each item here is just a singular item, like the ace of clubs, and it's not got any meaning to it. What we're going to do is we're going to change that from a normal single dimensional list, so it just goes item, 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 to a 2-dimensional list. And what this means, you'll see in a minute, is that for the ace of clubs, this item here, as well as saying ace of clubs, it's also going to give it a little value. So the ace of clubs will be valued as 1, the 3 of spades will be valued at 3, and the king of diamonds will be valued at 13. So that later on in our game, we can say, okay, if the king of diamonds, which is 13, is greater than the 3 of spades, which is valued 3, then we know it's greater. So how do we do that? Well, what we do is, before we start creating our little nested loop here, what we'll do is we'll set this starting value to be 1, which is great. And then what we do here is, instead of appending a single item to our deck, what we do is we create ourselves a list inside of the list, which is known as a 2-dimensional list, and we add a second item here called value. So the first time we do it, ace of clubs, as well as saying ace of clubs, it'll also add a bit to it here that says, you know what, an ace of clubs is valued at 1. So we do that, we go through, and for each of the suits we add 1, 1, 1, 1. So ace of clubs, ace of hearts, ace of diamonds, ace of spade. Each of those is a 1. And then after we finish this inner loop, just here, we do value equals value plus 1. Which means go to the next value. So it'll do start at 1, do all 4 of those, and then because it's not inside of this loop here, it will then go up to the next one. Let's try that. Let's hit run module. There you go. And now if we do deck, there you go, you can see it. Instead of just having a single dimensional list where it's got like ace of clubs, ace of hearts, ace of diamonds, it's now got a 2-dimensional list with each item has 2 sub-items in it. The name of the card and the value of the card. Ace of clubs is 1. The 8 of clubs is 8. The king of hearts is 13. Brilliant. Good. So that's our deck sorted, and we've got all the values sorted, which is great. But what we need to do now is we need to shuffle this deck so that it's in random order. Otherwise, it would be a pretty easy game. So how do we do that? Well, that's actually nice and easy. Because we've imported the random module here, we can use the random.shuffle method. So there you go, random.shuffle, and inside of the round brackets we put deck. So what this means is we want to take the deck and we're going to shuffle that deck in place. So now if we run the module, click OK, type in deck again here. Whoops. There you can see it should now be shuffled. That doesn't look very shuffled. Let's just try running it again. Deck. There you go. That's looking a bit more shuffled now, isn't it? So 2 of spades, 8 of diamonds, 10 of hearts. I think it was actually shuffled here above. I think it was just didn't look very shuffled because it seemed to put all those 3 at the top there. So that's how we shuffle our deck. Brilliant. So now we've got a deck of cards. The cards are all shuffled and we're pretty much ready to start our game. So what do we do now? Well, we're going to want to keep track of the score. So let's start the score at 0. Just create a variable called score and set it to 0. And before we start going through our main game, what we'll do is we'll just take our first card ready for the whole game. So, and the way we do that is we use the pop function. Card1 equals deck.pop. And I'm putting the 0 here, which means go and get the first item. Python always starts counting at 0, so it will go and get the first item of this shuffled deck. Let me show you that now. If I did card1 over here equals deck.pop, it should 0. It should go and get the 2 of spades with value 2. And it should take it out of the list. So if now I go deck, there you go, the 2 of spades is gone out of the deck. And if I type card 1, it saved it as card 1. Good. So we've got the first card that we're going to tell the user and say, look, this is our initial card. So how do we do that? Well, this next bit of the program is going to be repeated a lot. Or maybe only once, we don't know. So it's going to have to keep repeating, it's going to have to keep showing the card, and then the user has to guess, and then we have to decide whether they've won or whether they lost. If they win, then we give them extra score, and then we go back to the top of the loop, and we do it all over again. But if they've lost, then we break out of the loop, and we say game over. So the way to do that is we're going to use a while loop, because that's an infinite loop, because we don't know how many times it's going to happen. And we just do a while true. And the first thing we do here is we clear the screen. Now, I'm going to use CLS because I'm in Windows. But if you're using Linux, then you need to do os.system clear. Because it's a slightly different system. This command actually won't work here in the Python shell. It'll do nothing. But when we come to do it later in that blue screen, as I showed you at the start, I think it will work there. It will just clear the screen so that it looks nice and neat. So there we go. So let's have a go here. The current card is, there we go. So we're going to say, okay, the current card is, and we're going to show them this card 1 there. Card 1, there we go. And that should show me the first card. And then what we do is, if I actually know above there, we'll print the score first actually. Your score so far is score. There we go. So it should tell them their score first of all. I'll just put a \n, a couple of \n's. That means new line. So when we come to run our programs, it will print the score at the top, and then it will give us a couple of empty lines for a bit of nice bit of space. There we go, good stuff. And then let's ask the user what they're going to choose. So choice equals input, higher or lower, question mark. There we go. And let's just test that there for the moment. Let's see if that runs. So the idea being it should run it, pick a card. There you go. So score so far is 0. Current card is 8 of hearts, which is valued at 8, higher or lower. And then if I put H, it will then go through. And we'll look at what we've got to do next to make it change to the next card. Good. Now, a couple of things to improve so far. The 8 of hearts. We only want to say the current card is 8 of hearts. We don't want this whole sub-list here of the 8 of hearts and its value at the moment. So we only want the first item. Now, Python lists, they start counting at 0. So the first item is 0. The second item is 1. So we only want item 0. So what we can actually say is here, the current card is go to card 1, but we only want to get the first bit of it, which is item 0. There we go. So we put card 1 there, 0. Let's try that. Run. And now, there you go. The current card is 3 of diamonds, higher or lower. Brilliant. So we've picked our choice. Excellent. Higher or lower. And now what we need to do is we need to pick a second card. So card 2 equals deck.pop. And we'll go and get the first item that's left in the deck, which is great. And let's tell the user again. The next card is, I'm going to go, this time we're going to go to card 2. I'm going to get the first part of card 2. There we go. Brilliant. And then we'll have a time.sleep 1 second. So it'll sleep a second. Let's just try that. Make sure that works. So run module. Okay. The current card is Queen of Hearts. Higher or lower? Higher. And then it picks the next card. Now at the moment it's still going back to that Queen of Hearts, so we need to fix that in a minute, but not yet. There we go, good. So now what we need to do is we need to tell the user, we need to work out whether the user has picked the correct higher or lower, or whether they've got it wrong. Now there's 3 possible combinations here. Either they've picked the correct one, higher or lower, or they've picked the wrong one, or they've got a draw. So you've said higher than a 7, but the next card is actually a 7. You know, the previous card was a 7 of hearts, and the next card was the 7 of diamonds or something. So there's 3 possibilities. So let's go through these 3 different options here. So the first option is if we go to the choice. If their choice is, well, it's going to say if the choice is equals higher, like that. If choice equals higher, and so they say higher, and card number 2 is greater than card number 1. Now notice here I'm putting a 1 and a 1 for card 2, 1, card 1, 1. And the reason is it goes back here because we want to go to card 2, but we don't want this bit of card 2. We want this bit because this is the bit where we can do the comparison of greater or less than. So this means go and get the second part of the card. Because actually here, if we just break out this bit and we do card 2, you can see this is the bit we need. We need to do the comparison. So here we got if choice equals higher and card 2 is greater than 1, then we can print, let's print correct. So we can print correct, we can add to their score, and that's done. And we'll just wait as well. We'll do a time.sleep 1 second as well before it goes on to the next round. Good. So, but there's a bit of a problem in our game here when we ask for the input higher or lower. What about if we run the game, when I go to run it here, and when I run the game, what if I'm being really lazy? What if I just type, instead of higher, what if I can't be bothered and I just type in H? Yeah, it won't know, because here it's looking for higher, it's not looking for H. So what we could do is you could do something quite clever here. We can say, you know what? it doesn't matter what they type in, as long as the first letter, which is item 0, is H. There you go. Then that's going to represent higher. Good. So that means now I can type in H or higher. Either way, it will still work. But also, what about if I do a, let me just show this here. Oops. What if I do a capital H? Or capital higher? That won't work because there we're looking for the lowercase h. So how can we cope with if they type a big H or a little h or higher or a big capital higher? Well, what we do is we take, oops, not like that. We take whatever they've entered and we use the dot lower method on whatever they've entered to change it to a lowercase. So now it will work on either an uppercase or a lowercase. Good. So there's our first choice. If the second card is greater than the first card, brilliant. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a similar thing. So we'll just copy that, use Control C, and this time what we're going to do here is, so if they said it's going to be higher, but card 2 is actually lower, then we're going to say wrong. We're not going to give them any more score, and we're going to break out of the loop because it's game over for them. So there's the first two setups. They guess higher and they're right, or they guess higher and they're wrong. There we are. Now what we're going to do is we've got the other side of that, where if they guess lower, there we go. But this time, if they guess lower, it's got to say, okay, and if they guess lower and the card is lower, then they're correct. Same here, if they guess lower but the card is higher, then they're wrong. Brilliant. There we go. So those are the main options. You guess it right or you guess it wrong. So there's 4 there. They guess higher and it is higher. They guess lower and it is higher. Those 4 options there. So those are the main ones. The only other one to do here is if it's the same, and we can do that just by doing an else, because it can only be one of those 4 options, and if it's not one of those 4 options, then it must be a draw. Draw. There we go. So with a draw, you don't break out of the loop because it's not game over, but also you don't give them an extra score. You don't give them one more. So it just goes on to the next time round. Good. There you go. Now, once we've gone through all the way through that round, what we do now is we need to do something a little bit clever, because here, the card that was the second card here now, when we come back through to the top, we're no longer using the original card. The second card becomes the first card. So what we do here is we say, okay, make sure it goes back inside the loop. Just there, right at the end, what we do is we say card 1 equals card 2. There we go. So whatever was the second card becomes the first card, so that when we come back up to here, we then print out the second card. Let's just try running that and let's see how far away we are. So current card is 4 of hearts, higher or lower. I'm going to go higher. That's wrong. Good. That's okay. So it's kicked me out. Brilliant. Let's try that again. Let's just make sure it's running correctly. Current card is 5 of spades. Let's go higher. King of diamonds. Correct. Let's go lower. Oh, very close. Good. Correct. And as you can see here, the score is going up. Let's try lower again. Oops. Lower. 4 of hearts. Good. And let's try lower again. Oh, I got it right then. That's okay. Let's try lower again. That's never going to work. Oh. Now, Anyway, so I don't know how I'm being so lucky here. That should be a draw. Yeah, good. So I'm quite lucky there because I've managed to do a draw, so it's tested to make sure that's working, and I've also managed to get ace of hearts and ace in clubs. But you can see here how it takes the original card, and then after it comes through the loop, it then replaces it with the new card. So we go lower again, and it should say wrong. Brilliant. And it's going here, it's kicking me out. What we need to do here at the end of the game here is say, okay, let's print out game over, and then we'll just print out the final score. Your final score is score. There we go. In fact, what I will do here actually before we do that is we'll do an os.system and let's CLS. There you go. So we'll clear the screen. It'll tell them their final score. We'll wait. I'll do 4 seconds, and then we'll just clear the screen one last time. os.system clear. CLS. There you go. So clear the system one last time. Now, there's only one more problem with our program, or one more improvement to do to our program, and that's here on the choice. At the moment, that choice, if you type an invalid input, the computer doesn't really know what to do, and it'll just throw it as a draw. Let me just show you that. So let's just run that. Oops, I've put a speech mark there. So here, there we go. If we run that, if I type in like Doge, it will say draw. Boop. It will just keep saying draw. And that's because here, it tries for those 4 possible answers, but if it fails on those 4, it just assumes it's a draw. And that's because here, when we do the input, it doesn't actually check to whether you've typed in higher or lower. So how are we going to do that? Well, what we're going to do is, I'm going to fix it. We're going to put this choice inside of a loop. And the reason we're putting it inside of its own little loop in the outer loop is because we're going to keep asking the user to enter a choice until it's a valid choice. Well, how do we know it's a valid choice? Well, that's simple enough. What you can say is, okay, if the length of what they've just entered is greater than 0, so it's actually they have actually typed something rather than just pressing enter, then we can say, okay, if what they've entered there, let's do choice.lower brackets, there we go, 0, oops, no, if choice 0.lower in H or L, then we'll break. There you go. Nice and easy. So we start this infinite loop here. We ask them to enter H or L, or higher or lower. And then, okay, if they've actually entered something, so the length of whatever they entered is greater than 0, and if that choice then, the first letter of choice, or item 0, and the lowercase version is in this mini list of H or L, then if it's one of those 2 characters, then we just break out of our little loop, which will then carry us on in our program. So let's just run that, and let's see how that works. So score so far is 0, current card is in the hearts. Let's press enter. There you go, and you can see it now. I'm pressing enter, it won't go anywhere until I've typed in some sort of valid answer. So let's try lower. 8 of spades, good, correct. And now score so far is 1, let's go higher. 5 of spades, so wrong, and it will say final score is 1, game over, and it will eventually just clear the screen. There you go, all done, all done. Now, as I said before, this clear screen bit only works, it doesn't work inside of the shell here. If you wanted to run it as a normal program outside of the idle system here, what you can do is in whatever folder you've saved it as, so I've just saved this file here on my desktop, hold shift on that folder, I'm going to do it on my desktop, right click, and you can either choose Open PowerShell or Open Command window here, depending on your version of Windows. It will come up with a shell window here, and then you can just use Python or Python 3. I think mine does just Python. You can just check which one it is, and just higher lower card game.py. Type the name of the program. There you go. And as you can see, what it does here, because of this os.system clear or os.system CLS, what it's done is it's cleared the screen. So let's see how quickly I can do for the final bit. Let's go higher. Oh, I've lost already. Game over. Final score is 0, and it should clear the screen and take me back out of the game. Right, there you go. Let's just leave that full code up there for you at the end. Let's just make it nice and big. And there's a nice, simple higher or lower game. If you like the tutorial, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you've got any questions or any suggestions for any more tutorials, then just drop me a comment. Thank you very much.